Today's going to be kind of a more informal lecture because we're just going to be teaching you kind of some skills that might help you for the hack challenge, but it's not going to be anything that is like required for an assignment or anything. So we're just going to be talking about two things, which are just how to work in GitHub, specifically with branches, so how you're going to be able to cooperate with other people, and then also SnapKit, which is kind of an easier implementation of auto layout. So first, we just have a few action items. So if you haven't switched your grading scheme to sat unsat yet, please do that by the 13th, which I believe is Wednesday, which is also the drop deadline. If you haven't changed your grading by then, we're going to have to give you an incomplete because we're not allowed to give graded grades. So please change that as soon as possible. We just moved the deadline for P6 to be Wednesday, but with slip days, it's technically due Friday. And then also, this is Han. He's going to be giving a guest lecture next week on SwiftUI, which is an alternative to auto layout as well. Yes.
Yeah, if you have friends who are not showing up to this course on a weekly basis, you should tell them to show up if they want a very educational lecture.
It will be recorded though, so.
Yeah. I've been told I'm very easy to pay attention to.
All right, so we're just going to kind of get into things. Some of you might have noticed that I have switched recordings because I wanted to add some stuff. So this is what you might see when you log into your GitHub. This is the landing page, and hopefully you guys have already, got an account and maybe set up the GitHub command line interface. If you haven't, I'm not really qualified to give a lecture on that, but we are here to help you in office hours if you need to set up things like OAuth tokens or whatever. You're just not sure where to start on how to set up GitHub. Totally just come see us. We're happy to help. So a little explanation of what GitHub is it allows us to track changes to the code that we make. And it allows us to do it in a way that allows collaboration because it will track changes that a bunch of people will make and then we'll be able to combine them for us. So like you can think of kind of like working on a live Google Doc, except it's more like Word, where you make changes and you send it to someone and they make changes, except it's slightly better at allowing for people to work at the same time and then deal with potentially the errors that happen afterwards. So for example, here's Eatery's code base. There's a lot of commits. And when I say commit, each one of these is a commit. But a commit we can kind of think of as a current snapshot of what someone has been working on. So like I might make some changes and then I'll make a new commit and that will have all of my current state. And then, for example, Will made a commit afterwards and then GitHub tries to kind of connect them between each other. And so, an example of what this may look like, if I actually, expand one of these commits, we can see that, okay, so there's a bunch of files, and Eatery is absolutely huge. So this isn't everything. It only is tracking changes and the changes that you want it to look at. So here's a bunch of files, and you can see there's a before and an after. I think this is before and this is after, but I might be wrong. Oh no, this is after and this is before. So you see most of the thing is the same, but then there'll be a few changes here or there. And this is really the essence of GitHub, is that we're going to be making these small incremental changes, and then we're going to be pushing them onto kind of a global storage of it so that we can interact with other people and see their work. So we can actually kind of visualize how a bunch of people are working on it. So this is the same project. This is Eatery. And we can see that, okay, so everything has one like home base. It has one central branch. And a branch is what we use to describe, what like one person's working on it. So like this has a main branch, and this is like our ground truth. This is what we want to protect. And then you might split off at a branch and say, okay, I want to work on something, and then you'll merge it in later. So for example, here, I was working on something, and then I merged main in, and then it went back into main. And this will allow people to work on things at the same time, and then because of this kind of chronological order, it'll figure out how to integrate these changes. But sometimes it won't know and it will ask you, and that's what merge conflicts are. You might have heard about those. They're kind of scary, but we'll be talking about those, so hopefully you'll be slightly more comfortable with them today. But so going back to this landing page, if I want to create a new project, I can either go to this new button or go to my repositories and then click new. And so I'm just going to create a really simple repository called iOS course GitHub demo. Not going to give it a description. You totally could if you want to. I'm going to keep public. So I'm going to add a README, and the README is just a file which will be like an explanation for what your project is. So you should always add a README, and we can show you how to. We'll be editing it today. So yeah, and that will also be shown on the landing page for your repository. So when people first get there, they'll look at that and see what's going on. Next is a git ignore, which we'll go into a little bit more later. But ultimately, what it's doing is there's going to be a lot of files that you just never want to track, and this is just a great way of categorizing them or ignoring them beforehand. So we can just do Swift, and that will get almost everything, not completely. But then I'm just going to create my repository. If you want, you can add a license. I think people often do MIT license, which is like free to distribute. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to create my repository. And so now we have created a repository on GitHub servers, but it's not something that we can interact with yet. We have to actually like download it before we can start editing things. You'll notice we have our git ignore and we have our readme, and we can open these files. So git ignore is just saying, okay, any file that ends with move to side, don't pay attention to it. And there's a lot going on. You don't need to pay attention to this. And here's the readme. It's very basic. And then it's shown here too. So the way that we get this onto our machine is we can do code. And this is a link that you can use to download it. You can also download it or open it in Github Desktop or with zips. Zips aren't great because I don't think it will actually be linked to this repository on the GitHub server side. So either do it with this link or with GitHub Desktop. I'll show you a bit more about GitHub Desktop later. And GitHub Desktop's a little bit more of a controversial topic, so that's why I'm putting this first. So when we want to download a code, we first go somewhere that we want to download it. So I'm going to download it onto my desktop. And the way that we download is git clone and then putting in the link. And then it will download, blah, blah, blah. And now we actually have, oh, that's not what I wanted. We can open our project. It's just going to be this from this link, except without the .git at the end. And you notice we have the README, and there's some extra files that you're not supposed to see. But you can hit Command-Shift-period, and it will show you hidden files. So any file that starts with a period will be hidden. And these are hidden for a reason. It's so you don't touch them, because, for example, this Git folder is everything that tracks those changes that I was talking about earlier. And if you mess with this, you could completely screw up everything. I mean, at least on your side, not on main, because main is protected. Yeah, don't touch those. I'm going to be touching this one in a second. You can also see these files. If I were to cd into our project, you can also see them. You can't see them with ls, but you can see them if you do ls with this tag for all, which is just be verbose and tell me everything. You'll notice there's also paths to getting out of the directory or the current directory. We don't care about those. dsstore is something we are going to have to worry about. This is part of the reason I'm re-recording this demo, but yeah. First, I'm just going to show you how to make one of these commits. How do I edit one file and then save it and then store it globally so that other people can see it. I'm going to open README. So everything in our oh, that was not what I wanted to do. Everything in our repository is kind of being checked on by GitHub. And so if I make changes, by Noah, you'll notice Xcode has this little blue thing. You've probably seen this in your projects. And you can interact with it. You can show your changes. And so this is what happened previously. And this is what your changes are making it become. And you can also discard change if you want. I don't want to. But so this is GitHub working. This is saying, okay, I have some, state currently, and I am going to add changes to it so that other people can use it. And so the way that we register these changes, it's already been recognized, but it hasn't actually, we have to opt in to say that this is a change that I want. So first we can check what things have been changed with this git status command. And so it's saying, okay, README has been changed, and there's also this dsstore file, which again, I'm going to ignore this for a little bit. But so README, I want to track README's changes. So I'm going to add it. So we can use git add, and then we put in our file name. And now if I do status, it should be green because it's tracking this modifications. If I were to edit it again though, it is a snapshot. If I just git status, it's an issue and I'd have to add it. I'd have to do this add command again. I don't want those extra lines though, so do this. And I think if I do status, it'll notice that those changes undid themselves, so it's fine. So now we have tracked our changes. We need to now save all of the changes. So now that you can imagine we have multiple files that we've changed, and we want to save them at this current state, at this current point, and then push those changes. And when I say push changes, I mean we have changes stored locally, and I'm going to put them onto GitHub servers. So the way that we save snapshots, so right now this is very much unsafe. You could remove it, and there's just not very safe. The way that we save things is commit, or by making a commit, and that's what I was showing here. These are all commits. These are all little snapshots. And these snapshots will contain, as I said before, everything that we have added. And then after each commit, there's nothing added, and you would have to add it again if you were to make changes to that file. So I'm going to just say added author. You can add more descriptive commit titles if you want. But so now we made a commit. We can see all of our commits if we do git log. So we'll see that this is initial commit. This is just something that happens all the time. And then there's this added author that we just made. But we need to push those onto the server. And the way that we do this is git push. Pretty self-explanatory. It just uploads the information. And then it updates. See, so now it says by Noah. And so something to think about when you're working with GitHub is right, so this is a live code base, so people could always be pushing new code, new code, new code. And we want to eliminate as many potential conflicts, any overlapping edits as possible. So every time that we start new work, we're going to pull. And this downloads the state of the current state of the main repository. So remember how I said there were a bunch of, or main branch, how there's a bunch of branches. So right now we just have main. It's downloading the main branch. And sometimes you'll see in older repositories, instead of main, it'll be master or origin. But for the most part, it's main. And we can actually check what branches there are with this git branch command. So right now there's only one because we haven't made any because this is a new repository. But we're going to make a new branch right now because it's really helpful to make branches, as I said before, to help with integrating changes with other people. So to change branches, we use git checkout. So we'll change branch. But right now we actually have to make a branch. So I'm going to add this -b tag. And what this does is whatever branch I'm currently on, which my terminal says main, I'm currently on the main branch. Whatever I'm currently on and whatever edits I've currently made, not saved potentially, just any edits, I want you to take a snapshot of what's going on here and I want you to give it a new name. So normally we name these something with your name beforehand, so people can tell easily who's worked on what. And then we put a title. And generally speaking, your branches are going to be more comprehensive. Like, you put an entire feature on it. I'm just going to make them really small to give you like an idea of what's going on. But so I'm going to make a new branch and call it Noah and /gitignore because I'm going to be editing the gitignore. So check out the gitignore. And if you'll notice, if I do git status, this DS store is still edited because it was edited on the main branch, but it hadn't been saved. But so when I did this checkout B, it's contained. So DS store is a file that Apple uses, a hidden file that Apple uses to manage folders. So it's information about the folder. I don't actually know what's in it. We can take a look. Never mind. We're not allowed to take a look, I don't think. Yeah, it's binary. So we have no clue what's going on in there, which is probably for the better. Ultimate story, we don't want to touch them. But we also don't want them to be in our GitHub repositories because they are annoying, and again are the reason I had to re-record this lecture. So the way that we do this is by editing gitignore. You can use nano, you can use vim, whatever. I am just going to use a text edit. So gitignore, I'm just going to open it. If you want to open it in a different application, you can do -A and then like Xcode or something, and it will open that up. And to ignore gitignore, or not gitignore, sorry, to ignore DS stores, the syntax we use is put in the file name ds_store and then star. So anything that ends with this, I want to ignore. So that could also be something with a path. So it could be like /folder /ds store. Right. So any DS store I want to ignore. So now I'm going to track this change. So .ds_, oh, no. Well, first we can look at what's been changed. So gitignore. And I'm going to add it, .gitignore. I'm going to commit it, changed gitignore. And I'm going to push it. So you'll notice it didn't let me push. This fatal error has no upstream branch. So we have created a branch locally, but there's no branch on the server. So it doesn't know where it actually wants to push it. So GitHub will just give you this little command, which says, I want you to push, and I want you to create a new global branch that's the same name. So then it will push. If I go to the landing page for my repository, there'll be this little yellow thing. And so when we're working on main, this is like if you're almost like if you were doing sudo stuff in like on your terminal. It's saying, I have all the authority. I mean, you can make checks and stuff, but you're working on the most protected code. So when you push it, it just changes directly. But when you're working on a branch, you actually have to ask to integrate your code or merge it. And here, I guess I shouldn't. I'll go through making a PR later. But a pull request, which is a PR, is saying, okay, I've finished this code on a separate branch. Can I merge it? And often you will have people go in and review it and reject it or edit it or whatever, make comments, and then they'll let you merge. But there's no other people here and I don't have any checks, so I'm just going to merge it. Actually, I can show you an example of one of those PRs. So this is a PR that Vivian just made. She's a wonderful member of the iOS team. And so she has a great description. Usually we have some images. And then you can see all of the files changed. You can add comments. And then, no, that's not what I wanted to do. If I go back to the original pull request, you can see that she has a bunch of reviewers, and Matt has already approved it. So she can merge it technically if I wanted to I could too. But so I merged my PR here, and I'm just going to delete the branch because I don't want anyone else to work on this branch. It doesn't really matter once you merge it in. But if I go to my code, I'll see that, okay, this commit was registered. These are the commits that changed this file last. And if I go into the git ignore, it has this DS store, which is great. So now I'm going to show you how branches can cause problems. So if I go back to main, and so notice, so we've updated our code, and before we want to do anything, we want to pull, right? Because someone's made a change, and we don't want to overwrite it. But let's say you were already started working, or you just forgot, or whatever, and you made a new branch. And so I'm going to say that I was going to add Justin to the README. So I'm going to make a new branch from main, the unupdated main. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to, I will do the same thing. I'm going to update main, because if I were to do that is I really want to make sure that DS store doesn't mess up my repository, because that's very possible. And for that to happen, I have to have had this recent PR. So I'm going to actually make sure that it's integrated. And so you notice that I pull, and I have git ignore had 2 line changes because I had a new line, and then I added the DS store. But so now I'm going to say, okay, now given this updated code, let's make a new branch for Justin. And let's say at the same time, I'm going to go back to main, someone else was editing this repository, and they decided to make a new branch and add friends as an author. So they're making a new branch. So they're editing at the same time with the same code. And for the most part, this will be fine. If you're working on different files, there will be a merge, but Xcode will handle this for you. Or not Xcode, GitHub. But if you work on the same files, it won't know what to do. So let's go back to Justin. So I'm going to add Justin to the README, and I'm going to open the README. I'm just going to say Noah and Justin. Okay, I'm going to save this. And now that we have git ignored the DS store, we can just add all of the edited files. And the best way to do this is git add -a. And this is all of the files. Of course, if you have edited files and you don't want to include them, you're going to have to be more granular with this. But this will add all of the edited files. I personally do dot, so everything in this folder, but I think that's probably just a bad habit. So if you see me in this lecture doing that, just ignore that. But so I'm going to add it. And if I check status, it's added, and I'm going to commit added Justin as an author, and I'm going to push it. Of course, I need to merge it. So now I can show you that PR process. So it's just, I have a name for it, and I can type some description, and then I can preview it. And there's a lot of markdown formatting that I'm not going to get into, but I just create the pull request. It checks if it can merge, and it will merge it for me. I'm just going to delete this branch. But so let's go back to add friends. Add friends. And I'm going to open the README again. And so I'm going to add friends here. Oh, and friends. So remember, this is Justin on the main branch, but it's friends now. So if I add everything, I commit it, and I push it, so now it should be another PR, comes up here, but you'll notice can't automatically merge, but I can still create this PR request. And so I have always done merging through terminal, but through this lecture I actually found that you can resolve conflicts, so times when you have edited the same file but have different results on different branches, you can edit those conflicts and resolve them on GitHub, and it's really clean. So if we, let me go back to where I was. So if we go back to this PR, so this was normally where it said, this is you're free to merge, but instead it's saying you have conflicts to resolve. So I click on that button, there'll be a list of files, each with the conflicts. We just have one because we only have one file. And it will show you the contents of the file. And so you notice this is different, there's a lot going on. So what it will do is it's saying you're trying to merge two branches, and I'm going to give you what each has on disposition. So here we had no one friends. This is the add friends branch, and this is Justin, and this is on main because remember I merged the Justin one into main. So now that I see this, what I need to do is figure out how I want to integrate these, and then also delete all of this like tagging stuff. So I'm going to just say I want it to be Noah. You didn't see that? Justin and friends. And then I'm just going to delete all of this overhead. And then once this is done, it'll actually make a new commit for us, add it into it, and then we'll merge that way. So I can mark it as resolved, and then I can commit the merge, so make a new commit. It'll update the PR, and then I can merge the PR. And so now we've made our changes. And that is all you have to do for a conflict. It gets a little bit scary when you're working on Xcode projects. I will show you that in a second, but it's really fine. If you just follow what I showed you, it's totally fine. And we're always here to help. But, so I'm going to make an Xcode project. And this is kind of where things get weird, just specifically with Xcode. So I'm going to make SnapKit demo. Oh, that should be in iOS, not macOS. SnapKit demo and storyboard, not Swift UI. And I'm just going to make this on the desktop. Okay. So we have our repository that we've been working with and SnapKit demo. Oh, also when I was making this project, here I'll make a new one just to show you. Initialize it with a Git repository. You can get around, you don't have to, but it's way better. It's easier. It's fewer commands for you to remember. So ideally we would just drag this in because that's how we could add anything because it's a change, so it would track the change and so if I go back to main, oh, I don't know if that's gonna be a problem. If I go to main, git checkout main. Can I check the status? Yeah, okay, great. So it has this folder for SnapKit demo, but you'll notice it doesn't have any of its contents, which is a big issue. So we have to undo this. So I'm going to put this back out here. And what we're essentially going to do is say that this repository is a parent of this one, and I want to download all of the contents into here, and then we'll push it back up to here, which is a little bit contrived, but it's the best way that I have found. So now if I do git status, it's gone again. So we can edit, or we can enter the new repository, the Xcode repository, just by dragging the folder in. So you'll see if I do git status, everything has been committed in. You can see that in git log, there's an initial commit. But we need to add this repository in. And the way that we do this is similar to how we cloned. We take the link, and we add it as a remote. So we do this thing called remote add. And so just like branches, we can add a bunch of remotes, which is like a connection to another repository. And so we do git remote add, and then we give it a name. So I'm going to name this main. Oh, I don't want to use this previous link. I want to use the one I just used. And so now I've added the remote, and we can check our remotes by doing git remote, similar to git branch. It doesn't pull up a new window, but yeah, git remote. Oh, sorry, I forgot to add. If you do git branch, the way to get out of that is by pressing Q. Yeah, but so, okay, we have a remote. And now we want to pull from it. So we do git pull. We specified the remote. We specified the branch, so main. And then you add this allow unrelated histories tag. So that will actually allow us to integrate these two repositories into one. And so we pull. And this is what merging looks like on GitHub Desktop, or on command line interface. So this is a lot scarier, but this is, we don't actually have to do anything here. So the way that we get out of this is Vim, so we just do control, or colon WQ. And this will quit and save. And then we've pulled. And so now in our SnapKit demo, we have the README and a git ignore and a git. And now we want to push. So I just do git push. And it will ask you, okay, like I still don't actually have a repository. I have a remote, but I don't have a repository. So how do I do this? And so similar to how we pull, we set the, we git push, and then we set the remote and the branch. And I want to push it directly to main. And this will push. And so if I go here, now we have our Xcode project, which is great. But every time that you edit SnapKit demo, you'll have to do this git push thing, which isn't ideal. So I will just get rid of it. And since it exists in the other repository, I can just pull, and then I can just edit from here. So I'm going to show you one thing, which is GitHub Desktop. So first I'm just going to make a change, and I'm just going to put an image here. So now we have to add this. You'll see save. If I did git status, we'd have a missing file that we need to add. And so if you have GitHub Desktop, this is something we suggest only using for simple operations. So, pushing and pulling, basically, and commits, of course. So we have our GitHub Desktop, and I want to add a new repository. So just locate one. And so I'm just going to drag and drop the GitHub, or the repository into it. I'll just add repository. And you notice it has changes. So these changes are things behind the hood. This is something that we'll have in some like supporting files, but not actually something that we touch. So this is because I add an image. This is all the information that goes in, and this is the actual image itself. So now we have these changes. Hopefully this looks kind of like what I showed you in Xcode before. We can put in a summary. So added stonks and a description if you want. And then I can commit. And I can push. And if I want to pull, I just pull. And if I want to change branch, there's this branch thing, and I can add a new branch, or I can go to existing ones. I think that's everything for GitHub. Is SnapKit's GitHub repository, which we'll be showing you in a moment, or how to use SnapKit. But it's just SnapKit. There's a lot of instructions. I just add it through Package Manager, but it will tell you how to use pods if you want. And then if you want to use Package Manager, right, we can just get our link here and then place that into our package search. Pod, but I'm just going to add a package. You can find the SnapKit GitHub and then add it that way, however you choose. But it's really just an extension to UIKit. So now that I've imported it, oh, and if you notice when I did add package, I added SnapKit, not SnapKit dynamic. To use SnapKit, we just import it, and then it's integrated into all of our views. So if I say I have a test view, which is going to be, let's say, an image view, and then let view be a UI image view, return the view, and I'm actually going to add an image in here. It's a wonderful photo of Han that you'll see in a minute. So nothing new. I've just added in this image, and then I add it to our subview, or to the super view. But what's different is we don't have to worry about the translate, auto, resize, mask into constraints. This will be handled for us. And then the way that we add a constraint is we have to access this SNP property, which is a property of all views and layout guides. And then we can make a constraint, and it will take a closure where we can set up our constraints. So it's kind of similar where we have the NSLayout constraint.activate. But this make is something called a constraint maker. You don't really have to worry about this. But so then how we actually create views or constraints is just top, and then I can set it equal to super view. And I can do this with bottom, and then leading and trailing, just to prove to you that this is in fact working. Oh, no. Okay, I chose the wrong simulator, so I'm going to redo that so it doesn't take forever. Okay, so we have our image. But obviously this isn't like really any better than what we've been doing. We still have 4 lines. But one thing that's nice is we can actually stack things. So I can do top, bottom, leading, trailing equal to the super views. And this will have the exact same effect. So essentially I've combined 4 lines into one. One issue that you might have noticed is it's not obeying the safe area layout guide. So what we can do for that is if I just want the top and bottom to be safe area layout guide, I can do top, bottom, equal to. And so we use equal to instead of equal to super view for anything else than super view. You can pass this into views, and then it will constrain. So it'll be the top will be equal to this, like if I put in view, top will be equal to views top, and bottom will be equal to views bottom. Or I can also do safe area layout guide. And then it says top and bottom are going to be equal to views, safe area layout guides, top and bottom. And we can actually further simplify these, because these are horizontal. These are the horizontal edges, and these are the vertical edges. Cool. And then I'm actually going to do, I'm going to put this into a container, because that's something we've talked about a few times. At least I've talked about with students individually. So I'm just going to say container is going to be a UI view, and I'm just going to make it green so that we can see it. And then I'm going to constrain it. So I'm going to say I have to add the subview again. And then I'm going to make some constraints. So SNP and make constraint. And notice how when it comes with this autocomplete thing, I can just press enter and it will reformat it for me. And so I'm going to say, okay, I want the center position to be the exact same as the views. So I'm just going to say equal to super view. And then I'm going to set the height and the width to be equal to the super views again. But I want it to be only like halfway, because I want it to be like, you know, here. So the way that we do this is with a multiplier. And so this is exactly the same as what we could do in constraints, but it's just formatted a little nicer. Oh, I should probably hide this view first. Okay, so we have this little container view. And now I want to put Han inside of it. So the way that we could do this is just say make dot edges. So all of the edges, this is vertical and horizontal, are going to be equal to container. And this will be perfectly on top of it, so it's not a little bit inside. But if we do want to just add a little padding, normally we'd have to worry about putting an offset that's positive on the left side, negative on the right side, positive on the top, and negative on the bottom. But the nice thing about SnapKit is we have a property called Inset, which is literally just push it inwards. So if I wanted to have an inset of 15, then it's inset by 15, which is really nice. Of course, if you wanted to offset it, so just do it constant as before, like move it rightwards, you can do that. So I'm going to make this, the vertical edges are going to be inset, whereas the horizontal edges are going to be offset. So this is going to be, again, in that positive direction. So container offset by 15. And so it's offset. And that's really the gist of SnapKit. It's just kind of, a different way to have shortcuts to a lot of these ideas. I guess I would like to show one thing that I often use while helping you guys debug, because you guys are going to hopefully be a little bit more independent on the hack challenge. So before I put these offsets and insets, it was right on top of it. And sometimes we like to know where a view is. We might, like, for example, if I put no image view into the image view. If I put no image into the image view, like, it's technically still there, but we don't see it or anything. So one way is to just kind of exhaustively look through your code or change your background. But one way without changing any code is this little button down here. I think I might have shown it already. It's the view hierarchy, so we can turn our view and we can look at it. And so we can actually see what views are here. So for example, I have the image view and a UI view. But another nice thing is if we're having like sort of a mysterious behavior, we can actually examine the constraints. So if I go back into the view hierarchy, we can see that our view is offset again because we have the offset. But if we were confused as to like why this might be happening, we can click on our view and then click on this little description button, and we can examine specific constraints. So it's like, okay, this view is, its left is 15 right of this left and stuff like that. And another really helpful tool that I think I haven't shown yet is breakpoints. So breakpoints are kind of like glorified print debugging, which allow us to not only check if something's run, but also check what our state is at the time of run. So if instead of having the image be set here, if I used a function that set it, so say name is string, and then have an image view, and I'm just going to set image views image. At first I have to create the image. And, right, so I'm using the string to create an image, and then I'm just setting it. So to replicate this line, I would just do set image, the string, and then pass in the test view. And this should work. Right, so we have our image. But if it weren't, we'd want to check, one, if this line is being called. So if our function's being called, so normally we just put like a print here, like hi. Or if you wanted to check if this is a valid string, you could press or do name, blah, 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 and then you could check if this is a valid image, like if it created it correctly. You could do print image, and this is fine. You're changing a lot of code, and it can get, like, it's fine. You can track your changes and edit them later. But breakpoints allow us not to do this at runtime and also to do this without changing our code. So the way that we add a breakpoint is we just click on the number, hopefully you can see that, next to a line. And what this says is, if this line is ever executed, I want you to pause there, and I want you to show me what's going on. So if I run this again to get it to trip that line again, then it says, okay, you're running, And I've hit this point. It's executing. You can get some state image, some interesting state. So I can see, okay, the name that was passed in was this name, and there is in fact an image view, even though it's really not telling me very much. And then we can check the next step. So instead of check what's at 43, let's go to 44, and that's this little button here. Sorry, you can't really see it, this button. If I do that, then it's, okay, now we're on to 44. And now that we're on 44, this entire line is done executing. So we can in fact see that image is a valid image. It's not nil. We can also see self, so we can see everything about this view controller and its state in here. And then if we want to go back to like running at a normal speed, we can just press play, and it goes back to running. And then we can also stop execution of our, or stop any breakpoints being tripped later by just dragging it off. And you might be wondering what these blue lines are. You've probably seen them a lot. And these are actually Git. It's showing you that you've made changes from your last commit that aren't checked. So once you make these, once you make a commit, they'll go away. And you can actually discard your changes. And you can show what it used to be. So this is what it used to be, and here's the difference. There are technically, you can manage commits through Xcode. It looks pretty cool. It will show you your differences. It's a little bit wonky from time to time, so I do suggest for the most part you manage it through command line or through GitHub Desktop. But it is kind of nice sometimes. Like if I were to open Eatery, this is an outdated version, by the way. I can actually go into source control, so this little tab right here, and I can see all of the branches, and then I can look at individual commits that happened previously, who committed them, what they did, and then I can also see what the specific commit actually did. Does anyone have questions, I guess, about SnapKit, about breakpoints, or the view hierarchy? You guys have anything to add? All right, well, that's lecture for today. We'll be around to answer more questions. I'm just going to harp again on what we said earlier. Drop deadline is the 13th, and if you're taking this class for graded, please change that to pass-fail, to SU. We're here to help if you need it. Yeah.